When people describe Sasquatches, one of the most talked about features is the head shape. Some say it's conical with a peaked skull like a gorilla, and others describe it as round or almost human-like. And a common idea I hear time and time again is that these head shapes represent sexual dimorphism, or that the head shapes differ with sex of the Sasquatch, with males having more of a conical shape versus females having more of a round shape, just like we see in the other great apes. The ultimate question is, though, does the data actually support this idea? Well, let's find out. Also, if you're new to the channel, hi, my name's Terrestrial. I'm a naturalist, ex-NASA researcher, and also the creator of the Sasquatch Data Project. I am a big ol' nerd, so if math, statistics, science, and Bigfoot are your thing, I hope you will give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. All right, let's first talk about why this idea is even a thing. In known great apes, head shape often reflects biology. It's not just random. Male gorillas and orangutans have a sagittal crest, or that peak that we see on their skulls that helps support their jaw muscles. Females and juveniles, on the other hand, often have a more rounded crania with less pronounced crests. So in these great apes, head shape directly ties into sex, maturity, and dominance. If Sasquatches really do follow these trends, and head shape is in fact a product of sexual dimorphism, we would expect to see some similar patterns. Conical heads would be linked to a larger size, more robust body build, and so on. To fully dive into this idea, I consulted with the Sasquatch Data Project dataset, which at the time of investigation had 2,468 reports to play with. And after filtering for only Class A sighting reports with the head shape, this left us with 185 reports. Now, this may be a little surprising, but head shape actually grouped into 5 different categories: conical, round, elongated, domed, and square. But due to the smaller sample sizes of the domed, elongated, and square head shapes, I chose to only focus on the conical and round shapes for this investigation. So the final sample size for this analysis was 164 reports. And just to give you an idea of how the data was split, 109 reports mentioned a conical head, where 55 reports mentioned a round head. So the first question became, does head shape correlate with taller heights and also more robust body builds? These are exactly the kind of relationships we would expect if head shape really does reflect sexual dimorphism like it does in the other great apes. I also felt it was important to look at 2 other categories as well: region of the encounter and also the season. Now, these may seem like random things to throw in, but I swear there's a method to my madness. Looking at the region helps us test whether head shape really is a biological trait, or it could be the result of some kind of geographic reporting bias. And then the seasonal analysis kind of acts as like a validity check, because if head shape really is a physical trait, we should see no correlation between the season of the sighting and head shape. So to perform this analysis, I made all kinds of plots, performed some statistical significance testing, and just looked at the stats in general, which we will dive into right now. Starting with height of the Sasquatch versus the head shape, I'll just keep it simple. There was no relationship between the height of the Sasquatch and the head shape. Both round-headed and conical-headed Sasquatches were reported at the same sizes, almost exactly. Conical-headed Sasquatches averaged at 7.42 feet with a standard deviation of 0.87 feet. The min and max were 4.5 and 9.5 feet. And finally, the Q1, median, and Q3 markers came in at 7.0, 7.5, and 8.0 feet respectively. The round-headed Sasquatches showed nearly identical stats with an average of 7.45 feet, a standard deviation of 0.84 feet, a min and max of 5.3 and 9.5 feet, then a Q1, median, and Q3 of 7.0, 7.5, and 8.0 feet, respectively. And to really drive home that there was no difference really between the estimated sizes of the Sasquatches versus the head shape, the statistical significance testing came back with a p-value of 0.92. That is an extremely high p-value and very not significant. Okay, so there's no real difference between the heights of round and conical-headed Sasquatches. Let's just look at overall body build. And once again, I'll keep it short and sweet. There was no real meaningful difference between the body builds of the conical-headed and round-headed Sasquatches. Conical heads were not more robust than the round-headed Sasquatches, and these differences that we did see were not significant. And as you can see from this plot, the athletic and slender builds were nearly identical between the two. And even though the conical-headed Sasquatches had a higher frequency of more robust builds, if you're just looking at the raw counts, When you compare those raw counts to those of the round-headed Sasquatches, that difference was not significant. The p-value for this analysis came back as 0.14. Again, not significant. With this being such a general overview of body sizes versus head shape, let's take it one step further and see if this might be a regional thing, because I've also heard that proposed as well. Maybe head shapes vary by region. But I gotta say, the data, at least as it stands right now, doesn't support that idea either. There was really no difference in the sighting report frequencies of conical and round-headed Sasquatches regionally. Due to small sample sizes of reports in the Northeast, and because I'm not completely done with the Sasquatch Data Project dataset yet, I only looked at the South versus West regions of the United States. And I found that there was really no difference in the sighting frequencies between the two head shapes. The p-value for this came back as 0.53, again, very not significant. And finally, our little validity check for seasonality also came back as not significant. The head shapes did not vary by season, which in this case is actually a good thing. Well, good depending on where you stand on the whole, like, Sasquatch is a hoax or Sasquatch is totally real side of things. So the TLDR of this whole video is that every test came back negative. I found no real relationships between any of the variables that I tested and head shape of the Sasquatch. So where does this leave us? Well, I'm not totally sure if we can claim that head shape is indeed a sexually dimorphic trait in Sasquatches like we see in the other great apes. At least so far with how the data lies right now, and to be fair, this could change later down the line when more reports are added, but at least as how things stand right now, there's no real relationship between the body build, size, or region of the Sasquatch itself and its head shape. I'm just not seeing the same biological signals that I would expect if this really was sexual dimorphism, at least with this very surface level overview and the data that's available to me right now. Y'all know me by now, and if you don't, if you're new here, I don't really like to take strong stances on things. I simply like to present the information and the data, give my 2 cents, but you know, you're more than welcome to interpret things as you see fit. Anyway, as always, we need more data to continue to look into these things. But as always, I encourage you to start letting the data and the numbers guide your ideas rather than the other way around. And potentially these results will shift with time, but only more data and time will tell. Thank you so much, you guys, for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that stuff. I'm on everything. The handle is @Sasquatch Data. I post way more stuff over there with more analyses, dataset updates, that kind of thing. So if you want to nerd out with me with even more Sasquatch data, make sure to follow me on all those other platforms. And what did you think about this investigation? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Stay rad.